Before we get started, I'd like to tell you a little about myself. I'm a senior partner here at More Than Words, and I started in July. Before More Than Words, I was what you call lost. I was in between basketball player, game banger, bad choice after bad choice. I found myself locked up in no house arrest. I came to More Than Words because I really didn't have a choice. My probation officer told me I had to get a job. I stopped going to summer school, and More Than Words was the only place that would hire me. Before More Than Words, I wasn't doing. I'm really seeing what I'm doing.
Okay. You did great. What are you talking about?
You did.
Keep going. Yeah, you are.
It's good, bro.
Yes, you're doing great. What are you talking about? I'm gonna read
He's up the mic, man. Mic up, bro.
Before More Than Words, I was what you call lost. I was in between basketball player, game banger, bad choice after bad choice. I found myself locked up in our house arrest. More Than Words was the only place that would hire me, so I kind of had no choice but to come here because my probation officer told me I had to get a job, or it was like, just you work in the UIS, you gotta do something. You're not just gonna sit at home. So when I came to More Than Words, I thought it was gonna be kind of corny working here, like the whole idea of selling books and working on yourself. but since I've been here, I've done nothing but gain great relationships. More Than Words checks in with my school to make sure I'm doing good academically. They check in with my home life to make sure my family's straight, and they come to all my court dates. More Than Words has done nothing but support me in my dream of becoming a fashion designer, and does nothing to support every youth that comes through those doors. No matter what it is, More Than Words has your back. I like to. I don't want to call it myself.
You're perfect.
I don't want to mess with her last name.
Just say Diana.
And I would like to start this off by introducing yours, Diana St. Hill.
All right, can we give him another round of applause? All right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you again for joining us for a thought-provoking and action-oriented panel discussion on reversing the narrative prison to school pipeline. I am Diana St. Hill, one of the organizers for Second Chance and Reentry Week. On behalf of the committee, it is an honor to be graced with your presence. It is my pleasure and honor to introduce our keynote speaker for this evening, our very own Suffolk County District Attorney Rachel Rollins. D.A. Rollins took office on January 2nd, 2019 as Suffolk County's 16th District Attorney, the first woman to be elected to that position in Suffolk County history, and the first woman of color ever to serve as a Massachusetts DA. She is the Chief Law Enforcement Officer for Boston, Chelsea, Revere, and Woodruff, where she oversees an office of about 300 people handling about 25,000 new cases annually. D.A. Rollins has an extensive career track serving as an attorney for 20 years with degrees from Northeastern University School of Law and Georgetown University Law Center. Beginning in 2007, D.A. Rollins served as an Assistant United States Attorney with the U.S. Attorney's Office in Boston, handling cases including but not limited to fraud, employment, discrimination, sexual violence, child abuse, gun trafficking, narcotics, and public integrity matters. In 2011, she was selected by Governor Deval Patrick's administration as the first person of color to serve as the General Counsel of the Massachusetts Department of Transportation. She is also a former Governor Deval Patrick appointee to the Judicial Nominating Commission, a past president of the Massachusetts Black Lawyers Association, and was elected and served a 3-year term on the Boston Bar Association Council. In 2018, the people of Suffolk County chose D.A. Rollins to represent them as their DA. She pledged to pursue that mission tirelessly by reducing incarceration, correcting racial and ethnic disparities, adopting alternatives to traditional prosecution, focusing the office's limited resources on serious and violent crimes, and improving relationships between law enforcement agencies and the community they serve. D.A. Rollins has not disappointed, and with the recent release of her comprehensive policy memo, it is evident that D.A. Rollins is taking a smarter approach to criminal justice reform and accountability. Without further ado, please welcome D.A. Rollins.
much. I want to tell you, I'm not going to speak for a long time because you're very lucky to have a wonderful panel here that have people on it far more qualified than I to discuss this. But part of the 2 or 3 points I want to make, and I'd love Mr. Fitzgerald to speak for Owen again. When I walked in, he walked up to me. I recognized him immediately because we had one of our forums when there were 5 Democratic candidates for the DA's office at More Than Words. We also, when I won the primary and then we had the general, we had some events here as well. And I recognized him and asked him how he was doing, and you said what?
Oh, so I thanked her because basically, like, when she came in office, like, this is not playing. So basically, when she came in office, she had helped me break down my charge. So I was like charged with something really serious, and it was like sink or swim. It's like you're going to jail or you're not. So she kind of like knew me, and she met me like before through More Than Words and like through More Than Words basically. She kind of realized like I wasn't a good kid, and every kid doesn't deserve to just have those options. Like it shouldn't just be sink or swim for everybody.
You were a good kid.
So
Yeah.
So.
But what's beautiful is we have 25,000 new cases a year. I recognize this very handsome face, but he's one of 100 files that come on my desk every day. What we need is to not be afraid to be courageous and to give people opportunities. Because our criminal justice system does a beautiful job of flinging people on a conveyor belt that's going 75 miles an hour to South Bay and Nashua Street for minor crimes, and then to MCI, insert whatever little town it is, for more serious crimes. And my entire memo is based on the fact that with certain offenses, and even more serious ones that are felonies, but the ones that I've said out loud are misdemeanors, nuisance crimes, quality of life crimes, that many people who touch our criminal justice system, these are the things when you pull their BOP or their PORI or their record, these are what you see. Their juvenile record, which everyone claims you never get to see it. Mr. Benedetti, we get to see the juvenile records, as the federal government certainly. And then when you graduate into more serious crimes, we get to see that it's the trespasses, it's the restraining orders, it's those things that we start out with. And my hope is that we can give people opportunities, that rather than branding them with a Corey, that we can stop for a moment and see if my office, instead of hiring lawyer after lawyer after lawyer after lawyer, is going to think creatively and maybe hire some social workers. We're going to still have lawyers. We're not complete anarchists, right? Like yet. But I will say that we're going to get some case managers. We're going to get some people that understand how humans operate, right? People that are smarter than me as the DA, who can explain to me and others, I'm already aware of this, but that addiction is a disease, right? And it should not be handled in the criminal justice system. And what I can tell you is when we have people like Jody that runs this program advocating for wonderful young people like Mr. Fitzgerald, it's an easy choice for me to say, we're gonna bet on you, and we're gonna bet on the positive side of you as opposed to everyone else that has only potentially been looking at the negative. So I am super proud of you. You did a really, really good job. And I've already said to him, like, I'm gonna be watching you. You know, wonderful.
Yeah, DA shouldn't say that.
No, I I'm watching you in a positive way. I want to congratulations and everything else. Not like a wiretap or anything. No. But what I want to just sort of set the table about is that, you know, I was reading something a couple months ago, and there are rituals in different cultures. And usually, so I'm fortunate to have gone to a very great private school, and in many sort of affluent cultures, overwhelmingly white, when young men, overwhelmingly men, are 18, the ritual is they get ready to go off to college. And sadly, where we are right now with mass incarceration is in black and brown communities for men, and then overwhelmingly now for women. I see we have this book, Push Out, which is excellent, and it's about the rise of young black and brown girls, but overwhelmingly black girls being criminalized in school, right? And so the ritual, sadly, in some of our other communities that I'm a member of, is when young men become 18 or 19, they're not getting ready to go off to war, they're not getting ready to go off to college. The ritual is that they go off to jail, right? And What I have no problem doing and taking the spears and arrows of the Herald or the governor or whoever else wants to question what it is we're proposing is we need to stop that. We need to start having uncomfortable conversations. We need to be able to discuss racial disparities without people thinking we're calling them racist or intentionally engaging in this behavior. What I can tell you though is that we have limited time, right? And as your DA, last night I had my 15th homicide since taking office on January 2nd. We had one on January 1st, which technically didn't happen on my watch, but of course I'm responsible for now as the DA. Those 15 people, I can assure you, woke up that morning and believed they had more time. Why I am so passionate about this is I recognize that we are promised nothing, and I have limited time to absolutely try to change the system, which has failed, period, end of story. So, on those happy notes, I will turn this either over to questions that you may have of me, or turn it over back to you, Diana. But you are really in for a treat. I know many of the people on this panel, they're exceptional. Listen and learn. Thank you.
Once again, I am Diana St. Till. I will be moderating the panel discussion. As a disclaimer, I will be recording this event for my podcast, Proximate, which illuminates how profoundly efficacious faith and being proximate to people can radically transform our justice system. Featured guests, like our renowned and astute panelists, enable their politics to extend beyond the confines of their personal proclivities, experiences, and comforts to fight for a more just society and galvanize listeners like you all this evening to action. But before I continue, I definitely want us to give a round of applause to More Than Words for hosting us, and for Leanne, who's hiding in the corner. Thank you, Jody, for allowing us to use this space, and all of the other More Than Words staff, and of course the youth. Thank you so much. So DA Rollins will not be able to stay the entire time, so I'm going to kick it off with her. So DA Rollins, you have been met with love and opposition equally. In fact, prior to taking office, just a few days, the National Police Association filed a grievance with the Board of Bar Overseers, claiming that your law license should be in jeopardy because you are too soft on crime. Since assuming office, many contend that you have taken a different approach from what you promised voters. Given your recent policy memo and stance on declination and diversion, how would you describe your current positioning? Are you too soft on crime, moderately soft on crime, or now you're tough on crime?
So I think we're going to change the words. I'm smart on crime. It's not about soft, it's not about hard. I would say with limited resources, we have to focus our attention on the important things. And that is in no way to say that I don't believe misdemeanors are important. The overwhelming number of people that come in contact with the criminal justice system, and we are fortunate enough to have the head of the public defender's office here, and Anthony Benedetti, and he can, I hope, confirm what I'm saying, touch our municipal and district courts overwhelmingly. We're not everyone is indicted up to Superior Court. Those are a small percentage of cases that we deal with. They're usually what we're seeing on TV when we turn on the television to learn about it. But what I can say is with limited resources, we have something like a 15 to 20% solve rate for non-fatal shootings. That is not good. I'm not great at math, but I promise you 15 to 20% solve rate means that 85 to 80% of the non-fatal shootings are not solved. And a non-fatal shooting is obviously a precursor to what? A potentially fatal shooting. We have the largest racial disparity in solve rates for homicides in the entire United States of America. If you are white and your loved one is murdered, there's a 90% solve rate. If you are black, it is a 42% solve rate. And very few white people are murdered, which is wonderful. We're not asking for anyone to be murdered, of course, but the racial numbers are incredibly stark with respect to who is the victim of violent crime and who overwhelmingly are the defendants. And remember, those people are interchangeable often in our world, right? Somebody who's a defendant has been a victim at a different time. So what I can tell you is when nobody's particularly happy with what you're doing, it's probably you're right where you need to be. There should not be a world where, you know, the pendulum has swung completely to the other side. I think we have a lot of work to do, for sure, but I have 300 employees. I like to remind people that as an elected official, this is a significant job, right? So I am responsible for Boston, Chelsea, Winthrop, and Revere. That's Mayor Walsh's entire jurisdiction, the city manager of Chelsea's entire jurisdiction, the city manager of Winthrop's entire jurisdiction, and the mayor of Revere's entire jurisdiction. This isn't 4 streets that I'm responsible for in Roxbury. It's almost 1 million people, right, that we are responsible for. And more than that, we have not only the state police, the Boston police, the MBTA police, Chelsea, Winthrop, and Revere police that we are partners with every day. And no, they are not going to be happy with some of the things that we're saying, but honestly, my job isn't to make people happy. And I love to say I'm not here to make friends, I'm here to make change. And you know, at this point, it is urgent that we make the change that we need. And if that means that an organization of 3 people that was created to try to challenge my bar license wants to take it, I'm not practicing law every day anyways. They can have it, I'll still be the DA.
So to continue with the policy memo, I know it's partly influenced by the Suffolk County Juvenile Alternative Resolution Program, colloquially known as JAR, that reduced the number of youth arraigned in court by 60% and instead placed them in community programs like GED programs. Is your office on track to do the same, and what are the outcomes to date?
Yeah, so if overwhelmingly this JAR program, which I can't take credit for, the predecessor Dan Conley did a beautiful job in creating this program. What I will say is there are some disparities in who gets into the JAR program, right? So we need to collect data to make sure we know what we are doing every day. And I'm scared to tell you out loud that our computer systems are like from the 1800s, it feels like, right? And so we are manually entering information. We had a wonderful meeting with the chief judge of the trial courts to talk about sharing information. Attorney Benedetti and I are talking about having access to that. But right now, a lot of the things I'm proposing in municipal and district courts mirror the JAR program. But the JAR program is only available to juveniles. And coming back recently from Europe, when we were 20 progressive prosecutors, myself included, went to Germany and Portugal, they look at youth a very different way than we do. First of all, you can't enter their system until 14 years old. I'm very proud that Massachusetts just raised the age of entry from 7 to 12. 7, right, was when we used to be able to charge people with a crime. It's now 12. We're still 2 years behind Europe, which is 14, right? And then 14 to 18 is juvenile. 18 to 21 is like young adult. 14 to 18 is young adult. Like 18 to 21 is emerging adult, and then they look at you becoming adult at like 24. And so this is 20 years ago they started doing this, before the brain science that we're seeing right now. And the number of years they put people away for serious heinous crimes is like 15 years if you commit a murder. And now they don't have the level of crime we have, but I think we need to be smart and look not just at what we're doing in Suffolk County and think we're the smartest people in the world. We need to look at all of Massachusetts, New England, the United States, and quite frankly, globally what people are doing, because they're doing some really amazing things around the country. So I'd like to believe that I'm smart on crime as opposed to soft or hard.
Thank you. So I know you briefly mentioned data. So what are some of the data strategies your team is implementing or in the process of implementing for prevention and intervention as it pertains to the youth and young adults?
So what we are looking at is we have an entire, in the back of the memo, we have sort of categorized with respect to, well, let me start. I think juvenile is already doing very well. We're now collecting the data on the racial disparities potentially of who gets put into the JAR program, because the type of person I am is I want people to have to, if we have great programs, you should have to opt out of great programs. You should be automatically opted in. Just like if you serve some time and you are released from incarceration, you should automatically be registered to vote. Like, things are too hard for people to do, and I believe it's not a coincidence, right? So what I can tell you is that the JAR program, for certain crimes, we can opt you out to say, no, 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 this is not something we think is JAR appropriate, but I think the overwhelming number of juveniles should be opted in. And then when you look at the memo, with respect to certain crimes, there are buckets where we are just straight out null crossing or dismissing cases. If it's the first time you've ever done anything, we're probably not even gonna pre-arraignment divert you to something. If we see that you have, and again, we're lawyers, we're not psychiatrists, we're not medical doctors, but if we look at somebody and they are presenting as though they could potentially have a mental health issue, homelessness, or substance use disorder, then we have information that we can pass along to you. But if it's a null pros or straight dismissal, what we are now going to implement, and this is something that was suggested from judges and law enforcement after I put this out a month or two ago, we're now going to have somebody who speaks to you before we just say, all right, it's dismissed, bye, right? We're going to talk to you and say, here's some information if you need it, we're not making any assumptions. If you continue to engage in this behavior, this might not be dismissed next time. Like, you need to understand it was dismissed because you have never done this before, but we now have a record that you did it. It's not on your query, but we have an internal data point, because what we can't do is give you the first chance to make a mistake 17 times. We might do that, but I want to know that it's been 17 times. That 2 weeks ago in Chelsea District Court, I was there for shoplifting, and now I'm in Dorchester Division of BMC for shoplifting. But if the Dorchester ADA doesn't know that it happened 3 weeks ago in Chelsea, we're giving you the first chance over and over again. And very candidly, if we're not capturing that data, Boston Police and the police and law enforcement have a right to be mad at me, because that's not what my document says I'm going to do. I have to, part of what's great about putting it in writing is you are held accountable, and now I need to be held accountable. But what's beautiful is we are on a world tour. What's the mic? No. We're on a world tour, right? I just was in Chelsea District Court the other day with my first assistant. We've sat down and met with the entire juvenile bench in Central BMC a couple of weeks ago. Before that, I met with Chief Justice Ronquillo, who's the chief of the Boston Municipal Court. I just sat down with Chief Justice Carey, who's the chief of all the trial courts in Massachusetts. We've sat down with Commissioner Gross, Chief Keyes, who's in Chelsea, Chief Delahunty, who's in Winthrop, Chief Guido, who's in Revere. We are not just sitting back and saying, I'm a dictator, nobody can fire me, and this is what we're doing. We are now going out and saying, what are the pain points that this document is creating for you? And because that was not my intent. And the answer might be, no, 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 we're not going to change that. Or it might be, I wasn't aware of that, we're going to adapt. But I think that's what leadership is, and that's how you do it.
And I thank you for your leadership. So the last question before I open it up to the audience, because DA Rollins do have to leave shortly.
I have 100 children waiting for me at home.
I know. So I cannot have this conversation without bringing up immigration, since that's been a big issue, and I know we had a big scandal in BPS not too long ago. So what is your office doing to protect our youth and their families who do get caught up in the justice system, so that we're not deporting them or inviting ISIS during their court hearings?
So part of the memo was we spoke specifically about immigration consequences, and what we're doing is we're working with Harvard Law School to come up with the hundreds, if not thousands, of collateral consequences that occur when somebody is charged with a crime, right? Overwhelmingly a felony, but sometimes a crime. We have a whole section on immigration consequences. I specifically stated in my memo that all of my staff is notified that they are to, they shall, not they may, they shall and must notify me if they see ICE in the public areas of our courthouses or detaining people there. I have never instructed anyone, nor would I, to stand in front of ICE or try to stop what they're doing. The appropriate sort of landscape for me to challenge ICE is in a court of law, which is what I've also done. So I'm a named plaintiff in a lawsuit that we brought against ICE that we have a hearing on tomorrow morning, actually, in federal court. So District Attorney Ryan, who's Middlesex DA, myself, the gentleman in the back, Anthony Benedetti, who's the head of our Public Defender's Office, as well as the Chelsea Collaborative. We all sued ICE and some of their named sort of leaders and requested a preliminary injunction, so an immediate stop to them detaining anyone in public areas. And then we also asked for a declaratory judgment, which is we wanted to stop immediately and sort of lift the needle off the record if we could, until a year from now they come up with what the decision is ultimately going to be. And the oral arguments are on Thursday. And then the other sort of quote that many of you might have seen is, a week before we filed that lawsuit, a judge